back. So there's a lot of choices we can make still with this setup right here. And I'm still not satisfied with giving the profile component the opportunity and the responsibility of actually figuring out which download URL this specific user should use. That should be something we take care of in this service. I think that's the case. So we're going to make an extra service right here, an extra call in there called get user with profile, something like that, with profile URL, something like that. So I'm going to do that for two reasons. One is that you guys can then see how we can actually keep building on these observables until we get all the data that we need. The other reason is then it makes it a lot easier for the profile component to get that single user with all the information, and all the information that needs to be loaded is loaded when I actually get the user, right? So I don't have to wait for an extra call right here to kind of get the image as well. And now the back side of the coin right here is we have to call three different services right now. We call the Authentication Service, the user in Firestore database, and the actual file inside the Fire storage. So that's three different calls right here to get a user, and I'm not quite satisfied with that. But again, there's a few things we can do. First thing we could do is again, like we talked about earlier, actually add the file down here directly on the user when he's uploaded. That's one possibility. And then just don't care about the huge URL in there that kind of points to file storage, right? We could also say that we're just going to hard code this into our code, and then we're going to add the name and the path of the actual image. Then we only have to do it once. But I think still that the one I'm going to build right here is going to be the most reusable one, in my case at least, so that's the one I'm going to go for, right? So here we're going to grab and remove this file service right here. We're not going to use it in here anymore. We're going to instead go to our service right here, and that's where we're going to use it. But before I actually add it in here, I want to do one more thing. On the user, I want to add an access point to the URL. Not to be used in Firestore inside the database, but to be used inside my program so that the UI can show this specific piece of information whenever we want to show the profile image, right? So I'm going to add here a profile image URL, right? Image URL. That's kind of the link for the profile image, and I'm going to save that in my code right here. Again, remember, I'm not going to save it on Firestore. I'm going to only save it in the code because I want to use it later for kind of showing or hiding my image. The other thing, I'm going into the user service now. I'm going to make a new function that can do pretty much the same thing as this guy, except I want to extend it. Now we could start extending this in here by doing a dot right here, adding a switch map in here, and it just gets kind of complex in my mind to kind of see it all happening, right? So it gets too complex. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go and create a new method that's called get user with profile URL, like this. And that user is we're going to still just return an observable with user, just like we did in this function up here, but we're going to extend the get user function. So I'll say this return this.get user, right? Return this.get user to kind of get this function up here. And then what it's going to do is it's going to extend this guy by switch mapping. So I'm going to use the switch map here again, switch map. Now again, doesn't matter how many functions you guys break this into. I just think it's a lot more readable when I start doing this compared to trying to build this in multiple layers, right? So let's just add, we're going to need the file service right here, file service from the file service, right? File service, there we go. And let's just use that file service now in the switch map. So we're getting back a user right here from the first switch map, right? Now we have the user. And for that user, we're going to say, dear file service, you have a download URL profile. I'm going to use the user's UID, right? The unique identifier for that user, UID. And I'm going to, on that, I'm going to map that user, just like it's exactly the same that we're doing right here. I'm just extending information on the user. Here we did it for the auth user. Now I'm going to do it for the actual user that we return from this function up here. So I'm going to map this guy. I'm going to get a user back, a URL back here from this service right here. There's going to be return a URL. I'm going to use that URL to kind of extend the information on my user. So the user is now also, this user right here is going to also get the information about the download, the profile URL, profile image URL right here. And that's going to be equal to the URL I'm sending in right here. Now the final thing I need to do is kind of return that user now again, just to kind of explain to the system that I just extended the user, I want to return him, and then return the switch map here in the end. Now the reason it still shows an error is because I of course have to return this call right here to kind of get this out of the way. There we go. Now notice how simple this is to read compared to if I had to extend this guy, right? So now we have a new function that will get both the user and the user URL if there's one available, right? So it'll get both now. That's pretty amazing. So jumping back to my component, so instead of getting the user right here, I'll just call the new function get user with profile URL, right? So now the user is actually available with the actual image. And I'm going to say in the end here, when you get in here, I just want to use the image that's going to be equal to the user's image, right? So now he has a profile image right here. It might still be null, but I don't care. Now I at least have access to the image. Now that made the code a lot easier to read down here, right? So that's all we pretty much had to do. Let's see if it still runs. So jumping back to my code right here. It doesn't seem to have changed my image. That's wrong. I wanted to kind of add the big beautiful frog instead of my beautiful face. So let's just try in here to notice right here in the change picture. I'm going to start using the user's image instead right here instead of the hard-coded huge picture value right there I had before. So now since I have the user available right here, I can start using him to actually set the image when I'm changing the picture with the animation setup as well, right? That's kind of awesome. So let's just put that in there, get rid of the huge string error as well, and let's see what happens. There we go, we have a frog. We have a frog. I'm a frog. Well, not that flattering. Let's just put me back and see what happens. It's trying to upload me, and let's see if it fails. There we go, we have lost back. Let's just refresh the page. Now we still have a few bugs, and that's okay, I'll live with that. Now we actually have me back. Let's just try and upload the beautiful frog again. And notice right here, the problem is that we don't do anything when the upload is done. We don't change the animation when the upload is done. We'll fix that, don't worry, we'll fix it. Again, it seems that it loaded me, so let's just refresh the page one final time. There we go. So now the upload is working and we can actually change pictures, and we even prettified our code a little bit now, at least for the component point of view. We now made it a lot easier to kind of read the component. And we also have the choice now to get the user either with or without the extra call for the URL right here. So that's perfect. That's it for this lesson. See you next time where we will have even more fun.